how the people are doing. So, the Pixel 7 Pro. It's from last year, I get it. But man, it does still stack up. There are its rough edges, obviously, like portraits. It's trash with portraits. But it's so good in so many other areas, like night mode, like just giving us really nice high contrast, super punchy, high dynamic range images. It really does work with photography. There's no doubt about that in my mind, and that's why going up against the X90 Pro, which is also a very photography centric device, but I do believe fairly different in terms of just how it approaches photography. Oh yeah, it can make for a very fun comparison. So let's jump right in. So, starting off with a simple one, simply because I want to get these Ice Natural Colors thing out of the way first. So this is Ice Natural Colors, and as you would expect, very natural colors right here. I've always sung praises about how good Ice Natural Colors is, and this is no different. It looks perfect in terms of just how the colors look to my eyes. The Pixel isn't far off, but it does have a little bit more saturation, more contrast, which I kind of like. And if you turn it off, then you can get ridiculously saturated images, because it's pretty obvious the saturation will shoot right up, and that can be good for anyone who wants the pop in their images. In this case though, you do see a bit of an issue. The Pixel 7 Pro can get in closer when you're trying to use a main camera to take close-ups. I think it counts on the Pixel at least, and I don't know why this issue exists with the new sensor on the X90. And yeah, the X90's new sensor has a lot of good stuff, but this isn't really one of them. Now for HDR, well, this may not be the most realistic situation when you're shooting photos, just generally speaking, but it is very fun to see the differences, and I'm a real sucker for them. Well, essentially, there is a bit of a difference, we'll get to that, but for the most part, I think both have very good dynamic range. I really like the highlight fall off, so to speak, on the Pixel 7 Pro, but when I punched in, man, the difference in detail was severe. It's pretty obvious, right? Like the X90 has so much more in the shadows right there. It's not even a contest at this point. Clearly, the X90 has a lot more. I think that's because of the newer sensor, maybe a little bit to do with the processing as well. Now zoom, see, this is a little bit interesting. So the X90 has possibly one of the best 2x zoom cameras, and you'll see exactly why in a moment. Even right here, it is supremely detailed. It gets beautiful shots day in, day out, literally. The Pixel, on the other hand, it doesn't have optical zoom at 2x, but it does use sensor crop, which means that you do get almost optical zoom-esque quality. It's not quite as good as the X90 in this case, but the detail preservation it's like 95% there. Instead, we get a 5x periscope zoom. You get supremely detailed shots, there's no doubt about that, and on the X90 you'll notice that the detail level is very high, despite having no extra optical zoom after 2x. That's simply because the 2x zoom is extremely high quality. But the beautiful thing about the Pixel 7 Pro is that it uses sensor crop once again on the 5x periscope, because now you can get 10x with sensor crop. And essentially it's gonna give you, again, near optical quality. Not gonna be perfect, no doubt about that, but it will get very, very close to optical zoom quality, and this is where the X90 is just starting to fall off. You know, you get more grain, less detail, smudging and artifacting, all that stuff. Now the ultrawide camera, well, it's gonna be a little bit more interesting now, because you see, with the main camera we obviously saw that the hardware is better on the X90. That is not the case with the ultrawide camera, and in a situation like this, I think the X90 really nails it with the white balance, and that's really all there is. Yes, the Pixel still has more detail. Just look at the brickwork and you'll possibly see it. Even with YouTube compression, you'll possibly see the extra bit of detail that I'm seeing on the Pixel 7 Pro as well. But when you go to a seriously harsh situation like this one, it's pretty obvious the X90 can't really keep up, and that a lot of that has to do with the hardware. The processing tries, like, you know, in normal shots the processing will take over and it'll do like 70% of the job instead of just 50%. But in situations like these, you need a good ultrawide sensor to compensate. This is why the Pixel is doing such a good job, even though it's a last year's flagship, and yeah, the white balance is still a little bit too much on the cooler side, but it's still doing a better job. Now for macro, see, I do think the Pixel can get a touch closer to the subject, but it processes it too much. Like it's excessive, and that's me being generous about it. You can see on the X90, even though we can get so close, it gives you a normal, natural looking image, not as overprocessed as a Pixel. Now then, the high-res situation. See, the Pixel 7 Pro, it doesn't have high-res enabled, so to speak, because the sensor on the main camera at least is 50 megapixels, but you can't really use it. You're stuck with 12.5, and that's the end of the story right there. Which is why when you zoom into 5x, you get a ton more detail on the X90 for good reason. The X90's detail preservation already has improved a lot. We saw that with just the regular shots, and without high res on the Pixel, it really falls short. Now the X90 comes in with high res on the 2x zoom as well, and in this case it's more than obvious just how good the 2x zoom can be. This is why even with 5x periscope on the Pixel, the detail difference at 5x wasn't quite as much as you would expect. It just has insane quality on the X90. Again, that's great and all, but the ultrawide camera should have received the same treatment, and I'm just perplexed why it didn't. Now then, for selfies, well, I think that the X90 has probably one of the most consistent selfies that you can get, because they had a very massive upgrade and it works really well now. The X80 Pro, the previous generation for this one, it had its issues. I made a camera compressor with the X80, you can check it out from the link in the description. There were some problems right there, but the Pixel, in this case, it does have good selfies, and it does have a little bit more saturation, more contrast. I do like the contrast, and it has a wider field of view, which I really like here. Even in a shot like this, the higher contrast, it just looks so perfectly balanced on the Pixel. And the X90 is not bad, but you know, that level of contrast and just a sheer perfect balance on the Pixel 7 Pro, there's no two ways about it. It looks amazing, and that's the kind of contrast I want in my selfies. Now, selfie portraits, well, I think in this case, the overall warmth and the magenta, in particular on the Pixel 7 Pro, it's a bit too much. And the X90 is actually overcompensating for the warm sunlight. It's removing too much of that, and it just doesn't look all that realistic. It looks a little desaturated, a little bit flat. One thing that really just takes it on the X90 Pro is that the overall background blur, like the edge detection, and also just how good the background blur looks, that's enough of a reason for me to prefer the X90 in this case. Now, in this shot, I think it's a tie, because both are doing a tremendous job. I really like the highlight fall off again on the Pixel 7 Pro, because although it's a bit more preserved on the X90, the fall off looks really natural. Like it looks super smooth, and there's no weird lines or gradient artifacts, none of that. It's perfectly done. And night selfies, well, the X90 has pathetic night selfies. I wish this had improved. I've been complaining about it for generations from Vivo flagships for now. It's been a while, but I do think that the Pixel has amazing night selfies. I mean, I had a really, and I'm telling you, it's a tremendously warm light, and the Pixel balances it out perfectly. It doesn't look weird or anything. Yeah, maybe the night sky outside could have been a little bit darker, but that's hardly a huge complaint, especially when you're comparing against the X90, which looks just terrible. I think the Pixel takes it. Now, the Pixel 7 Pro also comes with night selfie portraits, which is an uncommon feature because only the S23 Ultra, other than the Pixel, has this, and it's good. I just think that the situation was maybe a little too difficult. It was backlit, portrait mode, night mode, all that stuff happening. It's a lot of processing. And of course, things get screwed up a little bit, especially on my t-shirt, you can see it. But I guess the X90 is proof of just how difficult the situation was. Now moving on to portraits, of course. I think portraits look good on both at 1x zoom. And 1x zoom only, because, well, technically we can't really tell that the Pixel 7 has 1x zoom portrait because it's around 1.3 to 1.5x, a digital crop, which just happens. And yeah, there's obviously an argument to be made that it gives you better framing and all that jazz, but let's face it, digital crop is not the way to go for better framing. In normal, the 1x, you're not gonna see any issues. Like in this case, I think the Pixel 7 actually has better skin tones. But in an HDR situation, so to speak, I guess the previous one also was kind of challenging in terms of the dynamic range, but not quite as much as this one, I guess. But yeah, the X90, perfect balance here. It's it's very impressive just how well it can maintain everything. Like, yeah, in the previous one it kind of warmed up the skin and saturated it a little too much, but it did a good enough job. And in this case, it's again doing a good enough job, just giving us a ton more detail, ton more exposure on my face, while the Pixel is just not. Let's see, 2x zoom, or just a telephoto zoom, because the Pixel 7 Pro, it says 2x, but it's technically 3x, because the 1x is 1.5x. It's weird, I know, I don't really know why that happens and why that's still the case. But anyways, the X90 takes it pure and simple. It just has about 1 billion times more detail, and it just looks so much better, so much less processed and weird and less artifacty. Anyways, the Pixel also didn't really take a portrait shot in this case, even though it says that it's a portrait shot. I don't really know what to make of that. Now finally, for night portrait, well, see, I'll admit, this was a very difficult situation. I had tungsten warm lights, basically yellowish lights. That was the only light source in this case, other than a little bit of the outside light coming in from the windows. And I guess it's very simple which phone is taking the lead here. The Pixel 7 Pro's balance in this case is it's insane. I had expected both phones to give us results like on the X90 Pro, but that's not it's just not the case. I'm honestly speechless for a little bit here, because it looks so perfect on the Pixel 7 Pro. It just, damn. So I guess that was a very strong start for night mode, because that's exactly what we're jumping into now. And in this case, I think the X90 takes it, simply because it has less lens flaring and more control than even the Pixel, which tends to have really good control on the highlights. I mean, that's really the only difference. I do wish, technically in this case, both phones would give us darker night skies. I guess the Pixel is giving us slightly darker night sky, but yeah, the X90 is notorious for really blue and really bright night skies. I'm not the biggest fan of that, as you might have noticed. In this case, again, I like that we get somewhat of a gradient on the Pixel 7 Pro, and to be honest, both phones look really good. I think the X90 has a little bit more detail and sharpness, but I wish both night skies would be darker, because it would just add so much more character and contrast to the shot. But anyways, this is another main camera night mode, and this one was darker than the previous two situations. It doesn't look like it was, but trust me, it was. Most of the leaves were just silhouettes to my eyes, but the main reason I even took the shot is to test for details. And zooming in, this was in focus technically on the Pixel 7 Pro, as it was on the X90. The detail difference is so damn much that it almost looks like the Pixel was out of focus. Not the case. I checked around the entire frame. Trust me, the X90 has that much better detail preservation. I mean, it's something you would expect. It has a 1-inch sensor and its processing is amazing with the main camera night mode. But that's only about it, because the ultra-wide night mode just plain and simple sucks on the X90 Pro. I mean, it has no detail, it has a ton of artifacting. I don't know what the hell is happening with the sky color, because that is just weird. And yeah, the Pixel is also giving us a really bright sky, so to speak, but it's about 10 times better. Just look at the brickwork and just look at how much more detail we have on the Pixel 7 Pro. Yes, the Pixel has a bit of a magenta tint coming in from the warm lights, but it's still so much better. It really is sad, because the main camera is just so astronomically good that the ultrawide in particular just feels that much worse. Again, very obvious here. Just look at the artifacting that's happening in the sky and just the sheer lack of detail. It's just, there's really not much to say other than the fact that I am very disappointed. This one right here, this was particularly dark, as you might notice. It just doesn't work out for the X90 now, does it? Also, the X90 doesn't have quite as much of a wide field of view when it comes to the ultrawide camera, so that's also something it's lacking in. So yeah, the ultrawide camera is not particularly good on the X90. That's basically the conclusion I'm driving to here. Now for zoom at night, well, I kind of think that the 2x sensor crop kind of works out, but the overall detail level is higher on the X90. I do wish it had as much contrast as the Pixel, then it would be perfect, but the overall detail preservation does look a little bit better on the X90 here. At 5x though, the Pixel is very good here. Like, it's definitely using the periscope zoom camera. Yes, there was just enough light for night mode to kick in with the periscope zoom. The X90 obviously doesn't really come close in this case. But I do see some smudging happening. That's probably because the light gathering capacity of the 5x periscope isn't quite as high as the main camera. And well, you know me, I am quite the slut for ultra low light night mode, and well, I can't resist it, I'm addicted, well, what can I say? So I had to take one. I guess in this case, there's two ways you can look at it. On one hand, we have the X90 Pro, which is brighter, more detailed, just generally way higher sharpness, and it looks really good, less noise and artifacting, but it does have a weird warm tint, making it into the shadows, especially on the wall, because the Pixel 7 Pro is nailing the colors. It may not be as detailed, but I do like the overall contrast, and yes, there's a bit of artifacting, so the choice is not quite as easy, I guess. But then for the moon, well, essentially the X90 can take the moonshot while the Pixel can't. Basically, you can get 40x, which is not a lot, but at least you can. I mean, it's just a cool feature to have. That's all it is. So, with that said, yeah, I think, you gotta give Pixel some credit here, because it's really something that a flagship from last year can keep up so well with what I would consider to be one of the best photography devices this year. It sucks that the ultrawide camera sucks on the X90 Pro, but there are a lot of things that the X90 does really well, and it does them right. And we can't just dismiss the X90 Pro simply because it has a bad ultrawide. It has its other issues. There's a very good reason why people don't really find this phone to be particularly interesting when they want to purchase a new smartphone for themselves, but the X90's cameras are not something that anyone should underestimate, so to speak. I guess the same can be said for the Pixel as well, because man, it can keep up, that much I can tell you. It's showing some of its age, but it's still really good. So with that said, I do hope you guys enjoyed, found this helpful, and well, if you did, do drop a like, it does help me out a lot, and subscribe if you haven't already, and if you do want to check out more, links are in the description. I'll see you guys soon with more. Cheers!